happened?
Okay, here's the white man coming into power right now under Alexander and the Greeks. That's what this is talking about right here. Read on.
Which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl.
Read on.
The beast had also 4 heads.
And it's talking about after Alexander the Greek was going to die, that there was going to be 4 other generals that was going to rule in his stead. And that was going to divide up his kingdom. Everybody understand that? So it's giving us history right here. Read on.
And dominion was given to it.
Read on.
After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast.
Read on.
Dreadful and terrible.
Okay, so now it's jumping to another superpower, because the white man was going to have many kingdoms from Alexander and the Greek. It wasn't just going to be him, and then after that, it was going to be some other nations that was going to be ruling. Alexander and the Greeks was the beginning of the white man's empire. And it was also known as the beginning of the 7-headed beast. That was known as the devil in the book of Revelations. Do everybody understand that? It was the Greeks, the Romans, the Spanish, the French, the Germans, the Russians, the British, and then the Americans. And when you look at history, all these nations ruled. Everybody understand that? All of them had their time to actually rule the planet Earth. The Spanish had their time, which was the majority of, which was the reason for the conquest of the majority of the northern tribes. The French had their time to rule. The Germans had their time to rule under Hitler. They had their little empire that they looked like they was going to take the world over under. Everybody understand that? The British became powerful and mighty, and these empires were coming out of nowhere. Everybody understand that? And they just was in Europe just started to become a force to be reckoned with, because the Spirit of God, the time came for the words of God to be fulfilled. Do everybody understand that? So this is what started happening. You had the Greeks, then after the Greeks you had the Roman Empire, which was the white man till today is still saying that was his greatest empire outside of America. Do everybody understand that? And then after Rome fell, then you had a little bit of time that went by, but you still had Edomite nations that were still ruling, and then started to become more powerful to the period of what they call the Dark Ages. In the Middle Ages. Everybody understand that? So then you had the Spanish coming up, then you had the French coming up, you had the Germans coming up, and you had the British coming up, and then out of Great Britain, the American Revolution, America began to be known as a world superpower. Do everybody understand that? So this is what it's talking about. So it's giving us Gentile nations. You don't see nothing about Israel ruling nowhere in here. Everybody understand that? And that gives us some more insight when you go to the book of Luke chapter 21. Luke chapter 21. So Daniel, which was a great prophet, was seeing a vision from God about nations that was going to rule on the planet Earth. Gentile nations that was going to rule on the planet Earth. So now you go to the book of Luke chapter 21. And we're going to start at verse 19. Luke chapter 21, verse 19. I should just start at 17, just so we can relate. Read.
Verse 17. And ye shall be hated of all men.
Read on.
For my name's sake.
The real believers, true teachers, true church of Christ, teaching the message that Christ taught, would be hated for it. Do everybody understand that? That's what hated for my name's sake mean. Meaning when you really start to preach the truth about Jesus, people are not going to like it. Because the truth about Jesus was never a popular doctrine in the world. Not in the Bible, not during the time of the apostles, nor during this time. Do everybody understand that? So it's the same results that's coming back. Read on.
Verse 18.
Come on.
But there shall not an hair of your head perish.
But we ain't got nothing to worry about, because God is our protector. So even though this doctrine is not popular by the majority of the people on the planet Earth, we still teach it. Everybody understand that? Even though there's a lot of people that don't like the fact that we teach this, even though we hate it by a lot of people, and there's a lot of people that want to do things to us, that's not going to deter us from teaching this doctrine that God has sent us out to teach. Read on.
Verse 19.
Come on.
And your patience.
The Lord said, just be patient, because the time going to come when you're going to be able to get vengeance on the people that's talking about what they're going to do to you. You're going to really be able to do it to them. So the Lord said, in your patience, read on.
Possess ye your soul.
Yeah, keep your soul in your body. Lose patience, and that will cause you to lose your spirit in this day and time that we're living in. That will cause you to be killed. Everybody understand that? That was about to happen with the Apostle Peter a lot of times. He pulled out his sword, was ready to go to war. Christ said, put your sword back in your sheath. Everybody understand that? Because they that live by the sword shall perish by the sword. Everybody understand that? So he told them, just deal with patience. Wait for the time to come. Okay, the Gentiles had their time to rule, and they in their time. The scriptures tell us in the book of 2 Thessalonians that only he who now letteth will let. Meaning that God is letting them rule. God allowed them to come into power. There's no way, when you look at how they came into power, you see there's no way that they came into power except through God. There's no way that America, you try to figure out how you still in power. And you only see that is only because God is allowing him to rule. Because he's really not that strong. He spent all his reputation. All his reputation is based upon his technology and his weaponry. But when he goes to war, you see he really not that strong. Black Hawk Down. When you look at the movie, it looked more like the white man down. You know? That's the only thing that was getting dragged to Mogadishu, bro. So they need to change it. White man down, you know. So you see, they not that strong. Read on.
Verse 20.
Okay, so now the scripture says, in your patience possess your soul. You got to have patience. You got to be waiting for God's word to come to pass. Know that God is in control. It's not according to your will. It's not of him that willeth, or of him that runneth. It's nothing that you're going to do that's going to change the situation. It's no matter how bad, it's not how bad you want the situation to change that's going to change the situation. You got to wait on that time to be fulfilled. God gave each of these nations a time to rule. When it was time for Babylonian to be done, when his kingdom was over, then the Persians and the Medes came right in. They were conquered. They came from being unbeatable to beat down. Do everybody understand that? After the Persians and the Medes, when they came to rule, they came from being the mighty empire under Cyrus, under Darius, the king, and they became unbeatable to beat down by Alexander and the Greeks. And it looked like nobody was going to defeat Alexander and the Greeks, and then the Romans came and his own people beat them down. Do everybody understand that? And then that's what you start seeing after this. You start seeing the white man and his kingdoms that were spread out throughout the earth fighting among himself to take over power in the different areas that they was in. Do everybody understand that? So you hear about these different wars with the Spanish and the French and the Germans and the British, all white people fighting against each other to bring their area of the earth into power as the world's superpower, but ultimately to do what? To fulfill the words of God. While they're fighting against one another to get possessions of this earth, what was happening was God's people. Prophecy was being fulfilled upon us because the time of vengeance came. God was angry at us for breaking his laws and worshiping other gods and doing things that we were supposed to do according to the laws of God, and the time of our punishment came. So there was no power. We came from being the mighty Israelites to no might, not being able to do nothing against these nations that was coming against us and was able to so easily conquer us until it was time for God to bring us back, which we are in this day and time now. So this is the history that we're going through. It says, in your patience possess ye your soul. So while you're here, the Lord is letting you know that I want you guys to sit back and know that I'm God. It's not going to be done by an army. I'm not going to raise David back up and get his mighty men, and I'm not going to send them out against Esau. That's not how this is going to be done. You're going to know by the Spirit of God. He said, not by might, but by my Spirit shall this be done. Do everybody understand that? So our job is just to know what's going to happen and be patient enough to allow God to work. If you lose patience, then you're going to see God a whole lot sooner because you're going to end up being killed. But if you keep your patience, then you're going to possess your soul. It's going to stay in your body. You're going to be able to stay alive and watch the words of God come to pass. So everybody understand that? And are you seeing that? Are you alive with your soul in your body, seeing God's words come to pass? It's a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful thing to know what's going to happen and then to be living in a time where it starts to happen, where it begins to happen. The pursuit of happiness. What is it really all about? Because in your patience, again, like I said earlier, when people are waiting for something, they ain't waiting for something that's not going to show up. Somebody out there waiting for a bus, they expect that bus to eventually get there. You're waiting for a train, you ain't going to stand there forever. If that train don't come, you're going to leave. What the hell is this going to take a cab? Whatever you're waiting for, you know it eventually is going to come. Everybody understand that? And we know eventually our time is coming. Just like the white man, how the hell his time came? This guy was in the caves, and I mean, he was a Neanderthal man. He was, unrecognizable. He was, like a beast. You everybody understand what I'm saying? George the Animal Steel was worse than that. Worse than that. You can recognize him. He was a wrestler. Esau looked like the Yeti. You can recognize him. And they were shaved, just like they get you in the army and shave you up and all that. They were shaved up, and these guys put on miniskirts and beat everybody behind. Hard to believe, but God allowed it to happen. God is showing that he's the ultimate sovereign power, that nothing goes down without his sanction. When you had one of those kings and one of these kingdoms that God allowed to rule, thought that he was the only supreme being and the superpower. The Lord said, I'm going to have to show you something. I'm going to turn you into a beast. And then he admitted after he came back from his state of insanity, his temporary insanity, after he came back, he admitted that the God of Israel, the God of Daniel, is God. Then you had another one, Belshazzar, sitting up there drinking wine in the holy vessels and having a good old time. Then the handwriting was on the wall. It's time for him to die. So God is showing that he is sovereign. Do everybody understand that?